Episode 3 of this series on Of Mice and Men looks at Curly's wife and Curly. We'll focus on the character of Curly's wife and of course the character of Curly, and then look in a bit more detail about their marriage and finish with the events and significance of Curly's wife's death. Even before we meet her, we are told the details that turn us against Curly's wife and make us think poorly of her. "I seen her giving Slim the eye," says Candy on page 51, and he follows this with, "I think Curly's married a tart." Her first description is on page 53, and this passage is vital because Steinbeck deliberately describes her in such a way as to make the reader believe that Candy's impression of her is true and make us feel prejudiced against her. She has full, rouged lips and is heavily made up. Her fingernails were red, and she wore a cotton house dress and red mules with bouquets of red ostrich feathers. The reason we tend to judge her as the tart Candy thinks she is because we're asking why a woman would dress like this on a working ranch. The colour red is everywhere in her description, and the reader associates this colour with negative things: danger, passion, and the command to stop. She seems to be always searching for her husband. "I'm looking for Curly," she says on page 53. But she never finds him, which makes the reader think this is an excuse to flirt with other men. But really, she dresses provocatively to get attention and wants to know where Curly is so that she can avoid him. Curly's wife is shunned and insulted by everyone on the ranch. At various points she is called a tart, a lulu, a rat trap, jailbait, a bitch, poison, and a tramp. Even her name confirms she is an object of possession rather than a person in her own right. She is Curly's wife. She belongs to a man and has no right to even a first name. The men on the ranch avoid her because they are scared they will be beaten up by Curly or canned by the boss if Curly makes a complaint. She is near the bottom of the pecking order on the ranch, and when she gets the chance she uses what little power she has to threaten crooks and make herself feel better. "You know what I could do to you if you open your trap," she says on page 113. While this is a mean thing to say, the reader can at least understand the reason she feels the need to assert herself like this whenever she can, because the opportunity doesn't come up very often. Curly's wife dreams of companionship. "Think I don't like to talk to someone every once in a while?" And she dreams of fame and fortune. Could have been in the movies and had nice clothes. She blames her mother for her failure to make it as a film star, accusing her of discarding a letter inviting her to Hollywood. But in reality, the man who said he would make her a star broke his promise and didn't even contact her. Curly's wife represents danger in the novel, especially to Lenny, who is ordered by George to stay away. Other characters, and even nature itself, gets nervous when she is around. For example, George looks away from her and then back on page 53, which shows he doesn't know how to react. And the horse is stamped and the halter chains clinked on page 129. Animals become restless around her, which confirms the idea she is someone to be avoided. Overall, she is a woman in a man's world, trapped by sexism. Next, the character of Curly. Curly is the boss's son, but doesn't do a thing in the novel to deserve this privileged position. He is married to a beautiful woman, but he doesn't love her. The first description of him comes on page 46. He has a head of tightly curled hair, which suggests he's wound up like a spring all of the time. He wore high-heeled boots, which shows his high status on the ranch. His body language and behaviour shows us he is pugnacious and aggressive. He glanced coldly at George and then at Lenny, as if sizing them up, and he stiffened and went into a slight crouch, as though he could explode in a rage at any second. Curly has fought in the Golden Gloves boxing tournament, although it's clear he didn't win, which might explain why he's looking to prove his toughness all of the time. Curly's pretty handy, Candy says on page 47. Others fear him for this reason, as Candy says, "Don't tell Curly, he'd slew me." So they're scared of him physically, and they worry they could get canned if he says anything to his father. Curly fights Lenny to prove he is tough, but ends up humiliated. "If you don't tell nobody what happened, we ain't going to," Slim warns him on page 93, and this seems to solve the problem of Curly, at least until his wife is killed by Lenny. Like his wife, he represents a constant source of potential danger to the other characters and their dreams. He symbolises society's hostility to others during harsh and economically disastrous times. So let's look at their marriage. Well, theirs is a loveless marriage. They've only been married a couple of weeks, and Curly's wife is already saying things like, "Sure, I got a husband, you all seen him, swell guy, ain't he?" And "Sometimes I'd like to bust him myself," showing how she resents his tough guy behaviour on page 114. For Curly, his marriage is based on appearances. He has a pretty wife, so he looks good. He is more interested in his reputation than making her happy. He suspects others of messing around with her and wrongly accuses Slim on page 89 to 90. For Curly's wife, their marriage is based on revenge and desperation. She says, "So I married Curly, met him out to the Riverside Dance Palace that same night. on page 125. After her mother denied stealing the letter from Hollywood, she went straight out and married Curley to get back at her. This turned out to be a huge mistake. Curley's failure to satisfy his wife, physically or emotionally, or give her any attention pushes her to seek the attention of others. They spend the whole novel looking for each other, but for the wrong reasons. Curley, to check she's not with someone else, and his wife so she can avoid him. Curley's wife is trapped in a marriage to a man she despises. He ain't a nice fella, she admits on page 125. It is all of this that leads to her death in the barn by a misunderstanding at the hands of Lenny. Curley, even then, shows no remorse. I'm going to shoot the guts out of that big bastard myself, he says on 135 about Lenny. He's more interested in revenge, and not a flicker of sadness or loss is evident. This scene contains a huge irony. This is the first time they are together in the novel, and it's when she is dead. On the subject of Curley's wife's death, it's a tragedy of social misunderstanding. Curley's wife mistakes Lenny as violent, and Lenny mistakes her screams as a sign she's getting him into trouble, as George warned him she would. Her death has major consequences. It spells the end of the ranch dream, it's the last straw for George, and prompts him to take Lenny's life. The description of her dead body is ironic, because she looks peaceful. She was very pretty and simple, on page 129. Steinbeck points out the tragedy here. It is the only way she could be free of her loveless marriage and the sexism she faced, but ensured her dreams were also destined to fail. The meanness and the plannings and the discontent and the ache for attention were all gone from her face, also on page 129. It could also be argued, however, that even in death there is no escape from the criticism of men. Candy blames her for ruining his chance of happiness. Everybody knowed you'd mess things up, he says on 132. This concludes episode 3 of this series on Of Mice and Men. Stay tuned for more helpful revision guides. Thanks for watching.